Benjamin Barker!
The whole thing has a kind of destiny, I find, that how this has come to be. I remember when I first got together with Tim, he was talking about it and saying that he'd been marinating this idea of the musical. And it was one of our talking points. We got something in common. We both love Sweeney Todd, you know. And that's about it, though. After this film, that's it. We do have a child, yes.
Tim Burton actually had come to me about 20 years ago. He was a big fan of the piece. He'd seen it in London. It was not a success in London the first go-round. It has been since, but the very first time it was done in London, they didn't like it. And yet he saw 12 performances, I believe.
I think it was like the late 70s, 1980. It was the London production, and the emotion was so strong, and the humor and the graphicness of it. I knew that when I first saw it, that it just struck me as something really strong and something I really could relate to.
I'm a big movie fan, and no musical of anything I've written has ever satisfied me. And I thought, here's a chance to try again.
At last, my arm is complete again.
Tim is an auteur, he's a visionary, and he takes chances that most directors are fearful of. And this is a musical, which he's never done before. Either have I been, as a producer, been involved with a musical. So it's very challenging.
Bobby, you say? Take me to him.
As always with anything that I end up doing with Tim, the initial attraction is really Tim more than anything else. The singing, you know, was a real challenge. I mean, there was a real opportunity to fall flat on your face. Still is.
Your hair's rather nice.
It's for a price.
Order something else there to follow, since no one should swallow it twice.
If you're going to learn to sing and you're going to do your first musical, it's really stupid to do Mrs. Lovett.
Anywhere's clean.
Sondheim, he had casting approval over this part. It's easily the most complicated part in the musical. That's what I've been told independently by Sondheim. Because I've been reared on it. It's like my milk, because I haven't sung before. I think it's quite normal.
It has to be grosser. It's green.
Pretty good, John.
I've always been a fanatic of Sondheim, and I've always also wanted to be in a musical. I mean, as soon as I popped out of the womb, I wanted to be in a musical, but I never thought I could sing except in the bathroom. Mrs. Lovett, I wanted to be her since I was 11, and I went around apparently in Mrs. Lovett hairdos.
That's good. That's good. What you're doing is better than you think, so just say it.
Mum and Dad were big fans, and they brought back the score, and I remember sitting in my drawing room, looking at the score, going through the lyrics and listening to it on the record, and I just got completely hooked on the music.
And action!
Now it has to be grosser. It's green.
In the Broadway show, that was almost more the Mrs. Lovett show in a certain way, because that was musically the one that people gravitated toward. So there was a shift in that, because it's like we're going slightly more internal with it. It just sort of shifts what the tone of the piece is. But the thing that remains the same is that it's got to be somebody who basically has the same quality that Johnny does in a different way.
What is that?
It's for.
I knew who was going to direct it, and I also was desperate for my little 11-year-old self inside, that I would give myself the chance to audition. And we had a discussion, and he said, you know, I respect you as an actress, but, you know, it's a singing part. You've never sung, so... But I said, look, it doesn't matter. Look, let me just learn how to sing. Whether I get it or not, it doesn't matter. I've just always wanted to do it. I went to this great singing teacher who is a wizard. He's called Ian Adam. We had 3 months. I said, let's just try. And I really have worked my arse or ass off.
I'll come again when you have Judge on the menu.
It took a long time. You know, at the end of it all, I knew she was really right for it. It was funny because I did a drawing a long time ago, and I mean, all my drawings look the same, but I looked back at it later and I realized it was Johnny and it was her. There was a certain thing about it that just kind of shocked me into thinking, wow, it is them. And so got them together and looked at them together, and they just had that quality of a weird couple.
Tim always wanted a sort of like silent movie star look for both of us. So we've both got very, very pale skin and then rather dark sunken eyes, a bit like how Tim looks. You know, his usual sort of aesthetic. He loves pale, dark, sunken eyes, and because he's an insomniac, I think that's where it comes from. There's a lot of autobiography in there, but even it's completely unconscious. He's so not a narcissist, but it always ends up being somehow a version of himself. He'll hate me saying that, but fuck it.
My relationship with Tim is, it's family. I somehow know how he works, how he ticks, and certainly, you know, he knows me pretty much better than anyone. We did our first movie together like 17 years ago, man. You know, see, almost don't want to even question like what is it? You know, I just know that it is, and that's kind of what's important.
I've worked with Johnny so many times, and I think this is definitely one of my favorite characters because, you know, we've always talked about old horror movies, and the idea of kind of being able to create something like that and seeing Johnny play like a, you know, like a monster in a way is fantastic.
Yeah. I think the more creamy, the more it helps. And is it still easy to get on, Johnny?
Yeah, I mean, it's done pretty well.
I've always admired Johnny, as most people do, because of his choices as an actor. Because he's always done things according to his own likes. He's never done anything according to any sort of pattern or formula or any, you know, eye for creating a career or any reliance on his looks. I think in a funny way we're a bit similar in that way, in that we don't have much respect for what we look like, and we rather like camouflaging ourselves and getting away from ourselves. I know we both are allergic to watching ourselves, so it's sort of in a way a bit of a similar dynamic.
38 sugar, take 3.
What may I do for you today, sir? Stylish trimming of the hair. Soothing skin massage. Sit, sir. Sit.
You see, sir, a man infatuated with love.
I often thought of him during the filming of this, thinking he's got the perfect job. He doesn't have to say much. He just stares and broods and doesn't have much dialogue. I wish I could have that job. But he did have to sing, so that sort of balanced the whole thing out.
The closest I ever gave. I remember, I don't know, like 5 or 6 years ago, maybe, Tim came to visit us at our house, and he brought me like a CD of Sweeney Todd, you know, the Angela Lansbury, you know, stuff, and he brought it and said, you know, just, you know, I don't know if you ever heard this, give it a listen, you know. I was, you know, okay, gave it a listen, thought, wow, that's interesting. And then, you know, whatever, you know, 5, 6 years later, you know, the question comes, hey, what do you think, you know, you think you can sing? You know?
Richard and I were talking one day, and this was after probably maybe a couple months, and like, you know, I mean, I was comfortable, I knew he could do it, but nobody had heard, and so we just had this fantasy of like, you know, he starts singing, and it's like, oh my God, what the hell is that?
We're here at the studio, sets were being constructed, wardrobe was being made, other actors and commitments were being made. Studio, literally, we were spending millions of dollars on the picture. Not one person on earth had heard Johnny sing. And he's the star of the picture.
38 Romeo, take 1.
You're in a merry mood today, Mr. Todd.
Your delights are catching fire from one man to the next.
I think at the end of the day, Stephen Sondheim didn't hear him sing before he had decided that he would accept the fact that Johnny was going to do it. And you just look at Johnny's body of work and you realize that, you know, this is a man who holds himself to the highest possible standards. And we all knew that if he said he could do it, he could do it. It helped to know that, in fact, and it's a little-known fact, that he originally came to Los Angeles not as an actor, but as a musician.
What I did was I called up an old pal of mine that I had played in bands with for years. In fact, the guy he was the singer, you know, pretty much the singer, main singer of the band. And he has a recording studio, and I called him and said, you know, I got this stuff I'd like to try and sing.
Well, singing Sweeney Todd, they say, is like an opera more than Broadway. It's really hard. There's a lot of half steps. There's a lot of, you know, chromatic lines running up, and, you know, neither Johnny nor I can read music, so we were like using our ears and going, what is that, you know? It's pretty funny to see a couple guys out of the rock and roll days trying to figure out this amazing piece of music, but at the end of the day, it's a song and a singer and a melody, and it could be complicated, but it was fun figuring it out. I called my friend upstairs who could read music and go, can you come down and tell us exactly what note this is? We went in my place and drank some wine for a bit and smoked a bunch of cigarettes, and then it was like, were you gonna do this or what?
Just started kind of knocking them down one by one. You know, starting with My Friends, that was the first thing I ever sang. Like, basically, that was the first song I ever sang in my life. You know, that was pretty weird. Yeah. Scary.
Honestly, when we did the first take of the first song we did, which is My Friends, basically had to talk back. I said, you want the good news or the bad news? He goes, well, give me the bad news. I said, the bad news, you have to do this.
One day I was in my office on the phone. Tim bursts in and lays down a little cassette player and his headphones. And I didn't know what he was doing, and he walked out. So I got off the phone and put them on and listened to Johnny sing for the first time. And I just put it down, went into Tim's office, and we both just stared at each other with great relief, but we had the biggest smiles at each other because we knew we had a great voice with Johnny Depp.
I wasn't sure if I'd be able to sing, you know, any of it. I certainly wasn't convinced I'd be able to sustain a note. I thought maybe I could hit it. You know, I knew I wasn't tone deaf.
All of the whole human race, Mrs. Lovett, there are two kinds of men and only two. There's the one staying put in his proper place, and the one with his foot in the other one's face. Look at me, Mrs. Lovett, look at you.
That was, you know, in many cases, you know, the booger. you know, holding a note for 12 beats. Yeah, not easy.
Lives of the wicked should be made brief.
There were several instances when I thought, well, you know, I'm just gonna hit the deck. You know what I mean? You know, I ran out of air about 5 minutes ago. Just pass out. Bam.
And I'm full of joy.
That's beautiful stuff to sing. I can only imagine that it must be really nice if you're a singer.
When I first heard Johnny, I thought, wow, it's amazing. He sounds like some kind of like rock star.
All right.
You know, just by the nature of him doing it, brings something different to it.
Come and visit your good friend Sweeney.
And I'd say that about all the actors. Because they're not singers, they all bring a certain modern quality to it, which is in the piece, but it just pushes it, I think, that much further.
Was it quick, sir? Did it in a tick, sir? Just like an elixir ought to do.
I am Adolfo Pirelli, the king of the barbers, the barber of kings. Buongiorno, good day. I blow you a kiss.
It was such an amazing thing that Sasha, you know, he's like the biggest star around. and that he just said yes to doing this, it just made me respect him even more as an artist.
Action!
It wasn't our idea, but he asked to come in and came in to a recording studio with Tim and I sitting there. We met him for the first time. Very handsome, actually. People, you know, think of him as Borat. He's actually a very nice-looking fellow. He told us that he always loved the show, that he had sung early on in his life in choirs and things like that. We asked him to step into the booth, but he wasn't prepared to sing from Sweeney Todd.
To trim the beard.
I'll never forget, he comes in for an audition. He comes in with the songbook for Fiddler on the Roof. And I wish we had it on film, because he did like pretty much the whole Fiddler on the Roof, you know, abridged version of, and it was fantastic.
Tim and I were literally on the floor, on our hands and knees, buckled over. Despite all the laughter, we realized this guy's got a great voice. And he had the part right then.
And the winner is Todd.
Greenfinch and linnet bird, nightingale, blackbird, how is it you sing?
I think what's been fascinating and complicated at the same time is that we had to commit to performances singing before we were acting. So we recorded the whole of the score before we started shooting.
All the actors, once they were selected, spent a lot of time working on their voice. Each had individual instruction. We were determined that every cast member use their own voice.
Nothing's gonna harm you, not while I'm around. Nothing's gonna harm you, no sir.
We did it at Air Studios. It was quite a shock because I was recording live with the orchestra at the time. So being my first time in a big recording studio, it was really amazing.
I don't care, I got ways.
Pretty women.
Silhouetted. One of the more challenging moments in one's life is when you've got the music in your hand and you're in a huge rehearsal room and Stephen Sondheim walks across the room and says, "Okay, let's hear it." It doesn't get much tougher than that, but it's so tough and it's so ridiculous what you're about to do, i.e. sing for Stephen Sondheim, that something in the body just says, well, then just do it.
Ooh, Mr. Todd, I'm so happy. I could eat you up, I really could. You know what I'd like to do, Mr. Todd? What a dream.
I was a little nervous, which meant that my singing wasn't as good as it could have been. And I think a lot of people felt that as well. So they thought, well, what we'll do is we'll take them to a smaller studio and we'll just have the playback from the track that they've recorded with all the orchestra. So we went to the smaller studio and into this nice little room. It was very, very comfortable. Like, you had little candles burning in the corner, like sofa, and it was just like Tim and Mike who does the music.
When we threw our gippers, I'll be there sleeping off your slippers by the sea with a fishy splash.
Good. Okay, same place?
It's very difficult to breathe here.
I know.
He hasn't left a lot of room.
He hasn't left a lot of room for breath, has he? Sounded okay there.
Okay.
Have another go.
By the sea is really tricky because there's no space to breathe at all.
2, 3, 4.
By the sea, Mr. Todd, that's a life I
I think Angela Lansbury lost her voice routinely at the end of the show. I was really comforted to read something that Angela had said, that she actually confronted Sondheim and said, well, where do I breathe? And he said, well, no, I didn't write anywhere you could breathe, you just don't.
With the sea at our gate, we'll have Kipper daring. What a fun to us straight from the Straits of Bering. Every night in a kip when we're
Helena, because she's got so many of the tough songs and she's having to find her character in the recording studio in a way, that's been a challenge because she's never really known, well, where am I going to be?
A and B films. And Action.
For example, if we take The Worst Pies in London, how am I going to know that I've got to sing this song, hit a rolling pin on the thing, make a pie? How am I ever going to know that I've got enough time to sing that, walk across to the pie shop and talk to Sweeney? That's been the hard one for her, because when you record the orchestra, we have to make those decisions without seeing the film.
Stop there.
So Helena would always be there, and she'd be whispering in my ear at the recording studio, can we just try one a bit slower? Can we try one a bit faster? Because she was trying to, you know, routine her scene out in her head.
Action.
We hadn't actually done any acting together, me and Johnny, so I didn't really know. So sometimes you did come across, but you thought, like, oh, I thought you were going to look at me at that. That was what I'd imagined in my booth. Of course, when you're acting on your own in a booth, your other actor is always going to do what you want. And then when they're on set, they got different ideas.
It's a little fight. What is that? You think we are... Sorry, baby. Sorry. I'll do it less, but it's got to stick.
It's been really interesting working with Tim on doing this musical. First of all, it's been, because I know privately, because I live with him, that he hates musicals. So it's kind of fantastic that he's doing one. This is my territory, because he thinks that Billy, our son's going to be gay, because he listens to Judy Garland, and I've just brought him up on musicals.
Ready? And action.
It's very interesting adapting a stage piece to a film, because there's lots of things that I didn't know to begin with that I sort of found out as we went along. For instance, you know, there's a lot of music and it's maybe 70% people singing, but, you know, we tried to avoid that kind of a lot of dialogue and then people bursting into song, and so to sort of deal with that, you know, we cut out a lot of choruses, we cut out a lot of secondary people singing things and let, you know, the main characters sort of project their feelings through the music. It's really coming from an internal place for them.
Although I'm an extrovert, he's asked me to bring everything back, not use my hands, I mean real practical things, hardly ever use my hands, which I found quite hard as an East End extrovert, to not use my hands. He said, no, looks theatrical. Not use my eyebrows too, which tend to be hyperactive anyway. He said, because you're singing, and you're already in a big environment. You're singing, there's a full orchestra. You look strange because we've got rather dramatic makeup. You've got to counteract that with a very restrained performance.
And if you're beautiful, what then with yellow hair like wheat?
Once we got to the set, it was a lot nicer than I expected it would be. I mean, the idea of lip syncing, because you're lip syncing in a sense, but at the same time you're not, because I mean on the set while we're doing it, we're singing it, we're belting it out like idiots, which is the right thing to do. But the pre-record is the guide and is also the safety net in a sense.
Great.
You don't necessarily have to hit the note properly, you know, each time on set.
It felt like we were making kind of an old-fashioned horror movie, silent movie with music, and you know, kind of going back to the kind of performers like Boris Karloff or Peter Lorre or Lon Chaney, people that were very expressive in those old horror movies, but then just set to music.
And if you're beautiful, what then?
In silent film, you know, when the director was off camera, he could sort of say, you know, turn right, you know, do this, you know, and I mean, Tim has the freedom to do that while there's the pre-record going on. Any sound is, you know, the dot, whatever. Anything is welcome at that point.
Goodbye, Joanna.
I can't anticipate. It's always a surprise when I see a film of his. And then I go like, oh my God, that's what he saw. Because he's a private individual, definitely creatively.
Mrs. Lovett, you're a bloody wonder, eminently practical.
He's very musical, and you can see it in the rhythm of not just the cutting, but the way the camera glides, the way it moves, the choice of angles. He's responding to the music.
This is Tim Burton's giant salute to, yeah, classic horror films. It's a beautiful marriage from two completely different worlds.
It mixes horror movie and musical, humor, emotion, light, dark, puts them all in there.
That's what'll make it interesting, as long as I don't ruin it in the process.
I'll steal you. It was just a different thing for me. I never tried something like this. For me, it was certainly new territory, and that's what I really enjoyed doing it.